Hello everyone, welcome back to the HR with Solomon. It's nice to see you again. Today we have a special guest that is none other than Laura Cashin, who is the CEO and the owner of Blueprint Human Resource. With the experience of 18 years, Laura has leading the people strategy for the major players like PAL Group of Companies and MN5 Marketing. She was also a leading instructor in Gardner Center, where she shapes many next gen HR leaders. Today, she is here to show us how move to HR from the corner of the desk into the strategic spotlight. Please welcome Laura Cashin. Welcome, Laura. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Solomon. I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Okay. It's a great honor to have HR entrepreneurship on this show. And I was quite bit amused by seeing the things, what you do things for HR. So could you able to tell us about the company? That will be, greater opportunity for the audience, what they can explore in the future.
Sure. So as you said, I've been in HR for a long time. I can't believe it's been 18 years. Since 2022, I have been the owner and operator of my own business called Blueprint Human Resources. I am a solopreneur here in St. John's, Newfoundland, and I work with organizations. I would say on a lot of what I call the HR infrastructure that is associated with building and scaling teams. A lot of people, there's a lot of different things you can do in HR consultancy, and recruitment is very needed. And there's a lot of great organizations in the recruitment space. And I tend to stay in more of a policy and program and tools and technology space of human resources. So that's who I'm working with here in all across Newfoundland and Labrador, kind of sharing my experiences. And as you said, I strive to help companies, but also HR teams to move into that strategic place and mostly in that HR infrastructure place. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for your information. I'm going to ask couple of questions with you, and you can give your inputs.
Yeah.
Moving on to the first question. You specialized in helping the companies growing without the growing pain. In your
Oh.
18 years of experience, what is the most common point that the leaders ignore until too late for their culture? Like, did you might seen? So what
Yeah.
is the thing?
Well, when organizations are undergoing growth, rapid growth, or even rapid change, there can be some real growing pains, as we've learned. And I think a lot of it comes from not anticipating what's coming. And so something that is working with your organization at 5 employees or 10 employees or 15 employees might not work as well at 50 employees or 75 employees or 100 employees. Is going to feel very difficult. So something like, for example, performance management. I'll work with an organization that is quite small and they say, we're doing performance management really well at 15 employees. Performance management might be you're in the same office or a shared space with most of your team members. You're talking regularly about how it's going and how we're doing and how we can do better. And if we missed the mark or if we can learn something or there's a gap, you're regularly communicating at 15 employees. So you are doing really good performance management. Everyone knows, where you stand and how it's going. But at 25 employees or at 30 employees, those conversations can be more difficult. A leader might have many more people. You might start to be co located. So that organic connection of talking regularly starts to break down. And once you get to 30 employees or 50 employees, we start to not be able to have those conversations. And there needs to be something, a tool, a system, a structure to help guide and make sure that that great stuff that you were doing at 15 employees can translate into 50 or to 100. And it's knowing that that's coming, that pain point is coming, and trying to invest in the systems or the tools that you need before you get to that 50 employee or 100 employees and people say, I don't know what's going on, I don't know how I'm doing, or that erosion of your culture can happen. So I try and work with organizations, get ahead of that and say, we need to, although it's working great now, let's consider how that's going to work as you get bigger, as you change, as you shift, as you grow.
Yeah, that makes sense because performance management is a key element of any organization. As you mentioned, it's going to be a pain point as the organization goes, and someone is going to help, going to be the great beneficial for the company. So in terms of retentioning the talent. So
I
now the
think one of the biggest mistakes is waiting too long. is waiting till you're at 100 employees or 50 employees and everyone's like, I don't know, I'm not feeling great about this. It wasn't a good process. I don't know. It's waiting till you get there and then we change, right? We're hoping we should be changing before we ever get there, before your culture, before the morale of your employees are ever affected. That's really the goal of Blueprint Human Resources, is to help organizations get to that really good performance management we do really well all the way through, is what I hope to help to bring to organizations.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer to the question, and it could be great beneficial for the audience. So now the next question will be, you provided on-call senior support. How does the fractional HR leadership provide more strategic to the value to scaling up the business like full-time junior coordinator?
Yeah. A lot of times when organizations are growing or they're starting to introduce HR to their organization, they might have got to those critical junction points of 15 employees, 25 employees, 50. They start to hire and bring in their first HR person because they're noticing that the support that their teams need or the support that their managers need is starting to take up a lot more time of the founder or the leader who has the most employees. And the first HR or junior coordinator maybe that you're bringing in, trying to help, but without often the types of tools that they might need to do that. And so a coordinator or a person, there's two sides of every pieces of HR. There's transactional and strategic, and both are incredibly necessary, right? Like we both need to pay employees well and run a solid payroll, but we also need to make sure from a strategic side that your compensation is competitive and that you're benchmarking, that you have equity. Both of those sides are needed. So the junior coordinator is really capable and probably really skilled at administering a great payroll and making sure that our benefits are people are getting what they need from their benefits and that we're bringing in great employees. But what sometimes is missing is having a person with more experience and a little bit more of a strategic perspective to say, are we in that competitive sphere? Does our recruitment process feel well and have really good candidate experience? Are we preparing for the roles that we're going to need in the future? They're two very different things. And oftentimes organizations are growing with a junior coordinator and they're trying to get both of those out of one person. And that's really difficult. They're very different skill sets. So having a fractional HR leader or a fractional HR consultant come into your organization can really be that person who can bring a different perspective and a different side of everything that's needed in HR, but at a fraction of the cost too, right? Because it's a reality that as we grow, that there's a finite budget, and so being able to bring in a leader for the things that you need help with junior coordinators or growing HR professionals can be a really good complement to most organizations.
Yeah, why I asked this question is I felt that you are the right person because I do see many business grow in particularly Newfoundland, city of St. John's, and I believe that if they want to, fully focused on the like business operation, so ideally as the team grows, and you told that the performance management or the benefits compensation, everything regards to, so that's the organization goes, or the particular CEO or the owner of the organization having the, like you as a, or someone is mentoring them as a fractional. I know it's a consistent factor for the long term. The what is the benefit they are going to get, the ease out of the tension, they can take up the operations. I think you will be the right person to ask because you might see in, okay, this is the way of doing the things better. So that is the reason I was putting down this
Absolutely.
question. And
I
yeah,
think you make a
thanks
really
for.
good point that, you know, I think it's unfair in the field of HR that we expect people to have all of those skill sets. I can't tell you how many times I see HR job postings that say, like, you have to design and develop and create the strategy, and then you have to do it all too, right? And to create these things is a very different skill set than it is to utilize and maximize and coach and develop your leadership in those spaces. Those are different skill sets. And when we're asking our folks in our organization to be all of it and do all of it, it's really an impossible task. It's really not something that one person could do. And so I try and come in. I always say I can be HR for HR, right? Like, who does HR call when they need some help and they need some coaching and support? And I hope to fill that for organizations where I can. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the thing when I was, thinking about the question. So this would be the perfect, for the you, and you nailed it.
Thanks.
uh, yeah. Like my next question is about, I named this as a corner desk syndrome. You
Mm,
help the teams moving the transformation work from the corner of the desk into the spotlight. For the
mm.
HR profession listening, what is the first step to be stop being reactive, then start being proactive?
I love that question because it's funny. I work with a lot of different organizations, and I have such a great HR community that I'm part of. And I think something that's consistent is we all, kind of see what we want to do. We know what that solution is, right? Like we see the organization struggles or things that we want to grow or improve or get or plan for in the future. But to get the time and space to do it can be a struggle. And so the solution we say is on the corner of our desk. Like I will get to that once I do these other things that are on fire, things that are busy that keep coming in, right? Like we do so many tasks, so many critical functions in HR that can be very busy. And it's hard to stop those. You can't stop those to focus on something that's an investment in the future. That can be a really difficult thing to do. And so people say, well, I don't have time, right? I'm in the weeds. I hear that a lot. Like I'm in the weeds. I don't have time to, our performance management right now is going, okay, I don't have time to make a new system or think about how it's going to work when we get hire the 25 people I'm looking for right now. And so some of the things that I talk to HR folks about is to start with the repeatable processes, right? If there is something that you're doing 5 times a week, even if it only takes you 5 to 10 minutes, that time that's something that you should think about investing in creating a small tool or system for, right? A great example is we're just at the end of February here now, and T4s are coming out or have come out for most organizations. And I think it's probably a universal truth that most organizations or HR and payroll departments are getting questions throughout February. When's my T4 coming? How do I get my T4? How do I log in to find it? Or will you send it right to the CRA? We get so many questions, and it might only take 5 or 6 minutes to get the email, respond to the email, and tell people what's going to happen. But if you get 5 of those or 10 of those a week, that time multiplies. And so creating a really good communication, like you send to everyone saying, this is a deal with T4s, right? That saves you 25 minutes. And when you start to focus on those more broad, small things, the time really adds up. I would say there's a lost opportunity cost, right? While you're sending that 5 minute email, what are you not doing? And if you're doing that over and over again. So I always say start with repeatable processes. And my second piece of advice is if you've been asked the same thing 5 times in a month, it's time to write it down. If 5 people or 5 different things have come in that same topic or the same area, if it's about a leave or if it's about benefits or if people don't understand how to log into something, if you've been asked that multiple times, write it down and publish it in a place that people can find it themselves. Because although again, people say, well, it's so easy. I'll just respond or I'll just send that Teams or that Slack message. What are you not doing every time you're doing that? And those things will add up. So that is how you start to create space to move into these strategic places. The more you build, the more policies you have, the more communications you have, once you start to have this big library of all this information for your employees, that is the stuff that keeps the organization going on a day-to-day basis, you start to have a lot more time to invest in that future stuff and that strategic piece and get it off the corner of your desk because you're carving out time and space by doing those things.
Yeah, haven't like said that it's going to be like 1,000 people are asking like same question. Again, it's going to be miserable for the HR department to respond it all in, because when part of the tax filing, everyone want the information like instantly. They
Yeah.
like, because the edge of tension is more. I think the same thing I can relate with the benefits also. What the benefit, like health insurance, what they're entitled into, I can frame that by you telling to you. I can imagine that, okay, like if I am receiving like 10 questions from 10 employees, it's going to be all the same. Either I can create an FAQ, I can put it in a
Right.
common SharePoint where people can access like any time in a day. They can log into their portal and they can download this stuff and they can see. If not, they can reach out to the HR. That's the great takeaway. Thought of, doing something. That is the reason, like, I should ask this question. So that is, it is a good way of thinking it proactive instead of reactive. And eventually I feel that the employees will think that, okay, my organization has everything, I don't need to worry about everything, because
Mhm.
they have the everything fixed on. So it is a kind of one time investment. Once you set it and you roll it, it's going to be like a forever.
It is an
Thanks for your
investment,
input.
and it's a good investment of time. I'll caveat it though by using it. So once you create that really great FAQ and you make it available, It's to make sure that we're not still answering the question. So if that question comes in, it's in your FAQ, I'm really diligent to say, that's a great question. Please check the FAQ. And we're teaching people how to find their own information, because sometimes we invest in these great tools and people, some people really just change can be hard, right? If they're always used to asking HR, call HR, right? And now we're saying to do something else. Change can be hard, but it is a good investment to do that. And in my experience, it has not hurt the relationship between HR folks and employees. Folks really just want the information and they want it to be easy. And so, to your point, when you're putting it somewhere that is available all the time, that's actually easier for most people rather than sending an email, waiting for a reply, calling you in a different time zone or calling you and you're unavailable. And then you have to get back to them. And then you actually have a follow up question, right? It's actually easier for that person if they have a really good, easy to access, know where it is source of information. People just really want it to be easy and to be able to help them, manage their employment as easy as possible.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So moving on to the next question, I want to touch on the certain questions of industrial diversification and how the strategy works. So the question is, you moved to work for a couple of companies like PAL to World Energy, and what is the one universal truth about the HR policy that applies whether you manage the pilots or the marketer or engineer? Like, what is the basic guideline you see, like what is going to be the same for all the industries irrespective of what it is?
Yeah, I love that. You're right. I have worked in a number of different industries. I've worked internationally, globally, high tech, aviation, lots of different industries. And I think what I love about HR is that what's consistent is people are people, right? Like if you're in an organization of 4 employees or 400 employees, the experiences that a human have or the needs that they have can generally be the same, have some consistency. Like we all want to be clear on what our jobs are. I want to be successful and have a good relationship with our leaders. We all have things happen to us in our lives, right? We all, some folks will welcome new members to their family, or they'll get married, or they will have difficult things with that happen to them and are looking for support. That is consistent. And some things that we see are here in smaller organizations is a really complex, conflict or need of an employee will arise and people are a little surprised, saying, I never thought this would happen. Organization our size. It's like, well, people are people, regardless of how big an organization is, that they have needs of information and career growth and learning and all of those kind of things. So, regardless of industry, what folks are looking for in workplaces, while people have different preferences and are drawn to different cultures and things like that, that varies a lot. But fundamentally, people are consistent. I think that they need a consistent, stable workplace where they can learn and thrive and grow and have really good tools and they can easily, know what to do when life happens, because that's going to happen regardless of what industry you're in. And I think so HR can bring really consistent approaches. While I write a lot of employee handbooks, and while the tone of them and the language and the culture that is reflected in each employee handbook is different, the core of it is communicating really well what employees get, what the expectations are. That is consistent across every organization.
So you talked about the handbooks. So employee handbook is when you are planning to, like when you get an opportunity to design it. So you will write in the easiest way the people can, like the employees can understand any given time. So do you have having said that, what is the experience of, like you developed a policy and
Mhm.
you developed a handbook and people are able to understand what is the feeling? Because I want to curious to know about this, because you learned, like you developing something and it's going to be someone is going to use like using at the night
Yeah.
time, like when they are in the trouble and they are getting back to you. It's a great book. So how does it feel to you?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. Employee handbooks are probably one of my favorite things to work on with organizations because they are, a lot of people say, oh, policies. Like they get this visceral reaction that they're these legalese, like boring things. And I see them as anything but, right? To your point, I love to write and understand organizations and how they talk and how they think and how they communicate with each other and see it reflected in that document, and creating clarity for people is very satisfying. There's a lot of satisfaction when someone has a question, they open up that document, and it's very easy for them to understand what's going on. A manager appreciates that, the employee appreciates that, and your HR team appreciates that because If anything, everyone gets on the same page and it creates equity within organizations and teams. And I think what I've learned is that it has to speak to the people who are using it and to be very mindful of your audience. So, most things do not require legalese and very strong language. People just really want to know clearly what's expected. And it helps people move quickly through that part of their work life and focus on their skill, their passion, what they're bringing to their teams. Because we managed all of these things so well within the employee handbook, people just know, right? They know what holidays are coming up, and they know who to contact when they, are going to be welcoming a child to their life. All of that thing, if you've done your job really well with that employee handbook, all of that thing is so low stress for folks. They just know where to go to. It's very satisfying when you see that come to life for sure.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity. So now I am inspired to, did I ever get the opportunity to develop a handbook? What I'm going to do, it's a, brainstormer for me, like it's opening a book for me. So if I get the opportunity, everyone who sees the video will think about what they are going to do. And thanks for brain opener for us. um, so moving on to the next question, I want to talk about some theory and reality part. And you spent like quite a decent time in Gardner section as an instructor. You teached for strategic HR. Them. What is the one concept from the textbooks look great on the papers, but it could be notorious or difficult to execute in the real time HR world when it comes to business?
I mean, that's a great question. It's a broad question because I think there's two things. So I love connecting with fellow HR professionals through the Gardner Center and folks that largely I'm talking about folks who are in HR who have a lot of great experience, and they'll all have to give you different answers about what, they might have been hoping that they could bring to an organization, and are difficult to do. But I also see new grads coming out of education, and they have learned a lot of great concepts and great theories, and they have a really solid foundation of understanding of things that can benefit organizations in the human resource space. And sometimes when they join an organization, they discover that it's much more difficult. They're not able to bring that thing to life that they really felt so passionately about learning. And I think a great example of that is being strategic, right? I think we all understand, or we learn about, and we see the value as HR professionals. We see the value of planning for the future and then making a plan to get there. We really understand that. And most HR professionals will say, I want to be more strategic. I want to accomplish those future goals. And they get that stuck in the side of their desk things. And I think what we sometimes, or as a new grad, or as we're starting out through this strategic endeavor, we don't realize how much of that transactional things we need to spend time on before we can get to that. How many times we have to write that FAQ or fix that or use that Excel spreadsheet and turn it into a piece of technology. We don't realize that we're going to have to do all of that before we have the time and space to get to that really big program design stuff and longer term community connections and engagement. We think we can dive right into that. And then we're frustrated when we're like, but I still have to do reference checking, but I still have to be, posting these positions, and I still am running payroll every week. We get frustrated because that is maybe a little bit different than we thought. And so in the real world, and when, businesses are busy and people are busy, we have to do both. And I think that is kind of a disconnect. And I love talking with folks about how do we get to that strategic thing that we all know we want to do. We know is a really good thing, and it's solving those things. But I think what sometimes a disconnect is, we didn't expect to be spending so much time in that, transactional stuff to get to the strategic stuff we wanted to get to.
Yeah, but now I can see that I should be having, as a student, as a fresh graduate, when I'm going to hit the workforce, what I'm going to do is, as taking your point, I'm going to having the open mindset, like anything, any day could be happen. HR is about all people, situation, and it could be turned in a different situation altogether. Because I still, at the last summer, we had like forest fire. The HR team might plan for something, but this, when the forest fire is happening, its priority is employee safety. So we have to take everything, like the mind should be
Yeah.
openness for anything. It could be a great day or it could be a nasty day, but HR is in the all the terms of all aspects.
And I think, what we learn about is, in best case scenarios, these are the really great tools and functions that we can use. But It's not always best case scenario in organizations, right? Companies have highs and lows, and we have a lot of constraints, right? Sometimes there's just not a budget available for that really fabulous tool that you think the organization will benefit from. That's not always the reality of business. So it's to be able to operate in there and still be striving. And still, I always say, as long as I'm moving the needle towards those big fixes or those big solutions, moving the needle and progressing is a victory, is something that we as HR professionals need to be kind of ready for that. We're not just going to be able to hit the ground and get all the money that we want to put in that really great strategic solution. I don't know. And most organizations can't do that right off the bat. And so having that expectation of like, this is going to be a journey to get to that strategic thing and going in with that mindset, it will get you there, but it's not that quick. I have a great solution and here it comes and we can do it. That's not usually how it goes.
Yeah, that's make another brainstormer for everyone, like what could be, because the textbook will be something different, and when the hit the floor hits the reality, it's going to be all different. So I want to talk about the reconciliation in practice. You got certified for the reconciliation. How
Mhm.
the HR leaders can move the lead reconciliation from the policy document into daily people practice for a company?
I think that's a big question, but I think as we move towards truth and reconciliation, I think it's the key is to have action associated with it and to have intentional action towards creating conversations, education, communication with Indigenous partners and communities and team members. And to create, I live in a space of what I call HR infrastructure, and it is to embed our intentions into our policies, into our structures, to remove as much human bias and to act on our intentions through that embedment, right? It's one thing to have a policy, to your point, and to say, we're going to do these things, but it's an entirely different thing to do them. And I think it's important as HR professionals that we don't stop at the policy part, right? Is that in our day to day lives, we are mindful of what the needs are and how we can be moving the needle towards reconciliation in an authentic way. And to, as leaders in organizations and as HR professionals, to sit with it personally and to acknowledge our own personal biases and areas for education. I think, HR people have a seat at the table now. I am happy to say that after, 18 years, beginning of my career, a lot of the conversation was saying, can we need to have a seat at the table? And I think we have that seat now. And I think it's important that as HR professionals, we're using that seat at the table to bring conversation, allyship, acknowledgement to our organization and to be influencing decisions around how we are educating our team members and how we are creating awareness and how we are acknowledging what truth and reconciliation really is, what the calls to actions are for organizations, and bringing that conversation where we have a seat at that table where we can. I think that's our responsibility. And so it's to turn it into action, is what I would say. And that is everything from recruitment to our leave practices to how we authentically network and communicate and are in the right, we're putting job descriptions and job postings in the right places so that we have diverse voices in our organizations. So that's what I would say. It's again, these are journeys and it's to be mindful of what part of the journey you're on and to, yeah, to consistently have action towards truth and reconciliation in an authentic way.
Now, I want to talk about some human element. So, what is the mental first aid the
Mhm.
companies should have? Because in the higher growth environment, how does the people can protect, the HR leaders can protect the psychological safety of their team while still it is hitting the business aggressive target?
Yeah, I mean, psychological safety is a number of things, right? It's creating a workplace and a space where employees feel like they can bring their authentic self, but they can also bring their opinions and their thoughts. And to create that safety takes a lot of different steps, right? And it's to have our leaders, maybe I'll take a step back. Maybe if I focus on what HR can bring to that, to your question, is to create some really good tools and boundaries and guardrails to both protect, but also to empower our managers and our employees. So, for example, one of the things that I think brings a lot of stress or can cause conflict is lack of understanding what our roles are and how they relate to one another. So many great tools that we can use in HR. And I think a job description is one of the most underrated tools that we have, right? Having a really great system for communicating what folks do and what the expectations are creates conversation and creates a place where people can feel safe in that they understand what is expected of them and how to be successful in an organization. I think a lot of times when we think about psychological safety, we think about how we support people when they are in a place from a mental health perspective where they need support or they're having a difficult time. And that should be available, right? Through our employee assistance programs and through having good connections with mental health practitioners and being able to point people into some really good resources. But as an HR professional, there's so many structural things we can do to help folks that any of the stressors that they have at their workplace. So I think job descriptions are a really good one. Having a really good manager training program so that managers can communicate well with their team members. They can create workplaces where that they can have really good feedback and provide feedback in a way that feels safe, in a way that is constructive, right? And I think having policies and procedures around hiring practices and your employee handbook, those are things that create psychological safety in organizations as well. As an HR professional, there are structural things we can do outside of supporting mental health, which is a part of psychological safety. I think that's critical. We all know that. But there are so many structural things that we should be focusing on, including, like I said, performance management, good job descriptions, employee handbooks, and manager training programs. I think all of those contribute to busy workplaces being able to accomplish their goals in a way that feels safe for employees.
The blueprints for the HR new graduates,
Mhm.
for the peers, my peers who is watching this show, who want to be a inspired HR consultant like you. So
Yeah.
what is the foundation, what they can lay from this time?
I think as an HR professional, I think we are problem solvers and we are helping organizations to reach their goals. I think one of the things that most HR professionals should start to do and you can do in your day to day life is be solution oriented. So when we see something that isn't working well, or we see something in our lives that can be better in our school, in our projects, in our classes, is to do two things is to ask why things are the way they are and second is to come up with improvements and solutions. And I think practicing that in our day to day lives helps translate that into consulting, right? Being a really great HR professional or HR consultant is to listen to what is happening with organizations or a manager or an employee or an HR team and to critically ask why and digging deeper. So, for example, in school, when you're learning about a concept of succession planning. Why is that important to organizations? Sometimes we forget to get back to brass tacks. Like, why is that important? And then it helps you to critically analyze why an organization might be doing something and then how you can do it in a way that solves a problem or can improve what we're build on something that we're improving. So I would say to anyone entering into HR, leaving academia, something to practice right away is understand why and then having a solution or an improvement of your own that you would like to bring to that would be something I would practice right now.
I want to ask this final question. So
Mhm.
what is the one piece of advice for the from the Laura for the future proof advice might have, but because you had a decade of experience on HR, like day in and day out, you see multiple people. So what could be the future projection for the HR?
That's a hard one. HR has evolved. I mean, over my 18 years, what I focused on and really enjoyed in HR has really shifted over this lifespan, over my career so far. And I'm sure it will continue to shift and grow. And I think if I would say to future proof yourself in HR is to be open, saying yes more than you say no. And I say that hesitantly because HR can be pulled into a lot of things. So no is a very powerful word. I love that. What is that? No is a complete sentence. So like I'm okay with no. But I think as you start your career is to be okay with moving around the various areas of human resources and supporting the business. I would say be open to that. We might have this idea that we want to go into recruitment and that this really floats our boat. It's okay to shift gears. Once you're in recruitment, you say, oh, you see a colleague or another area of the business of HR or even outside of HR that really interests you. It's okay to look through that and to ask for opportunities in those spaces. I would say to future proof is to be able to move around, be okay with that, and look for opportunities to see so much that HR has to offer. It is such a huge profession. There are so many areas you can specialize in and become an expert in. And as you start out, it's to kind of be open to those opportunities because once you're in there, you might find those things that you love doing that you never thought of.
Yeah, that's a great message. Like everyone thought HR does one thing. Now you expand, like you spread out the umbrella, like lot of things, and wings to expo. That is the one thing I could say that okay, I'm going to particularly specialize on this one, or else I want to specialize on two other things. It's all up to you. It's more often human oriented.
You're right. I
So
think
with
there's a
that,
lot to explore for sure.
yeah. With that, I think we are going to come to end of the section. Like, if someone who is watching the show, like, if you want to connect with Laura, I'll put the Laura's link, the description of her LinkedIn profile in my description. Also, like, you can visit her website. Her website is blueprinthr.ca. I will leave this in the description too. And she's a great resource because where I was looking for the people who I want to talk about. And like she has essence knowledge, and she is the testimony by doing this video. And if someone want to can reach out and you ask some questions, she is open to questions. Thanks, Laura. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed getting to speak with you today. And like you said, I love to connect with other HR folks, people passionate about human resources. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or check out my website. A lot of my contact details are there. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, with this I'm going to say bye to everyone. See you in the next section. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.